The fall wasn't an accident. My sister had shoved my elbow as I carried the laundry basket, my swollen belly making me clumsy on the steps. I tumbled hard, my knees and palms slamming against the wood before I landed at the bottom, gasping for air. I clutched my stomach, terrified for the life inside me. When I looked up, my dad was leaning on the banister with his arms crossed, a smirk carved into his face. "Good practice for crawling," he said coldly, "since you'll never rise above where you belong." His voice echoed in the house, and my sister's laughter trailed down the steps like nails scraping glass. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I pushed myself up, my body shaking, but all I got in return was another jab of words. "Don't be dramatic," Mom sneered from the kitchen doorway. "Pregnant women fall all the time. Maybe God's teaching you balance." She turned back to stir her pot of soup, food I knew I wouldn't be allowed to eat until everyone else was full. Every day felt like a new punishment for daring to exist. My sister, Harper, lived like a princess, her feet never touching the ground if she didn't want them to. She had a room upstairs with a queen bed, fairy lights strung around her window, and new clothes folded in drawers. I had the storage room at the back, barely enough space for a mattress and a box where I kept the few things my child would need. Tiny onesies I had bought secondhand, hidden under my pillow so Harper wouldn't steal them for laughs. "Why are you even having a baby?" Harper spat one night as she flipped through her phone on the couch. "You can't even feed yourself. What's the kid going to eat? Dust?" Dad chuckled at her words, patting her head like she'd cracked the funniest joke in the world. "She's just adding another mouth for us to carry," he said, his eyes narrowing at me. "You think you're rising, but you'll always crawl here, under our roof, our rules." I stopped trying to argue. Words only fueled them. When I tried to stand up for myself, Dad would remind me I had no right to disrespect the hand that kept me alive. When I tried to protect my unborn child, Mom would remind me, "That baby doesn't belong to you alone. It belongs to this family, and this family decides what's best." Meals were the worst. They'd set Harper's plate first: steak, mashed potatoes, vegetables glistening in butter. My plate, if I got one, had scraps. Fatty pieces no one wanted, cold bread, sometimes nothing. Once, when I dared to reach for the gravy, Harper stabbed my hand with her fork, drawing blood. "Don't touch what isn't yours," she hissed. Dad roared with laughter, nearly choking on his food. Nights weren't safer. My door didn't lock, and Harper loved sneaking in, taking my baby clothes, throwing them in the mud outside, or smearing ketchup on them to mimic blood. She'd lean close to my ear and whisper, "Better get used to loss. Not every baby survives, especially trash babies." I remember one evening I came home from my part-time job, exhausted, my feet swollen from standing all day. I had saved a small bag of groceries, milk, bread, some bananas, hoping to finally have something for myself and the child I carried. When I placed the bag on the counter, Mom swooped in, ripping it open. "These will go to Harper," she said, handing her the bananas. "You can drink water. Maybe it'll clean your insides." Harper peeled one slowly, locking eyes with me, and threw the peel at my chest. "You eat the skin. That's what animals like you do." I cried in silence most nights, but tears brought no comfort. Dad hated tears. Once, when he found me crying, he pressed his boot on my hand against the floor and said, "If you're strong enough to whine, you're strong enough to work." He made me scrub the entire kitchen floor on my knees, belly pressing painfully against the tiles, while Harper sat on the counter filming, giggling. "Look at the maid. Even pregnant, she knows her place." But inside, a seed was growing. Not just my baby, but something darker. I started memorizing their routines. What time Dad sat down to watch TV. How Mom left her purse carelessly open on the counter. Harper's obsession with her reflection, the hours she spent curled in front of her vanity, spraying perfumes, painting her nails. I saw the cracks in their arrogance, the small weaknesses they didn't think I noticed. They believed I was broken, trapped, too afraid to rise. But every insult, every cruel laugh, every shove down the stairs hardened me. I knew I couldn't escape them yet, not while carrying this child. But escape wasn't my only goal. They wanted me to crawl forever. I was going to make them crawl instead, and when it happened, it wouldn't be quiet and it wouldn't be merciful. The night it snapped wasn't loud. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest until you can't breathe. I had just finished cleaning the kitchen floor for the second time because Harper accidentally spilled juice everywhere. My knees were raw against the tile, my belly heavy and sore. She leaned against the counter, twirling her phone in her hand, smirking down at me. "You know, you look better down there," she said. "Crawling suits you, don't you think, Dad?" Dad didn't even look up from the recliner where he was nursing a beer. He just muttered, "She was born crawling. She'll die crawling. Don't waste your breath on the useless." The word useless hit differently that night. It wasn't just an insult, it was a verdict. They had sentenced me and my unborn child to a life of crawling, and I realized if I didn't change something, they'd crush us both. Later, when I limped back to my room, I found Harper sitting on my mattress, holding the little onesie I'd hidden under my pillow. It was white, with tiny yellow ducks on it, the one thing that gave me hope. She dangled it in front of me, grinning. Pathetic. "Do you really think this baby's going to wear this?" Dad said if it's born, it'll probably be better off wearing rags. Then she ripped the fabric down the middle, tossing the shreds at me. I didn't cry. Not this time. I just stared at the pieces on the floor. Something inside me went cold, harder than stone. Harper wanted me to break. Dad wanted me to crawl. Mom wanted me to beg. I did none of those things. I just picked up the scraps and folded them neatly into a box. Harper frowned, confused. "Why aren't you saying anything?" she demanded. I didn't answer. Silence was heavier than any insult I could throw. That silence scared them more than my tears ever did. In the days that followed, I played along. I let them believe I was still broken. I scrubbed the floors, cooked the meals, took the insults without a word. But while they laughed, I was watching, memorizing, collecting. I noticed how Dad locked his liquor cabinet, but always left the key in his jacket pocket. I noticed how Mom hid her cash envelopes under the sugar jar, assuming no one would dare touch them. I noticed how Harper left her phone unlocked on her vanity when she ran to the bathroom mid-makeup session. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing. The breaking point came one Sunday dinner. Harper had invited her friends over, girls just as cruel as she was. They all crowded around at the table, giggling and gossiping, while I set the plates. Dad barked, "Make sure Harper's plate is full. Don't let her sit with scraps like you deserve." When I served Harper, she smirked and said loudly to her friends, "My sister's just practicing for her real job, being a servant. Don't mind the belly. She's probably lying about being pregnant to get attention." The table erupted in laughter. I froze, my hands trembling on the serving spoon. One of the girls whispered, "God, imagine being her kid. Poor thing doesn't stand a chance." That was it. The moment I knew I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't going to let my child hear those words, not once, not ever. I placed the spoon down gently, ignoring the laughter that still rang in my ears, and walked to my room. I sat on the edge of my mattress, staring at the box where I had folded the shredded onesie. My baby deserved better. I deserved better. That night, while everyone else slept, I began moving, quietly, carefully. I slid Dad's jacket off the hook and lifted the tiny liquor cabinet key. I took Mom's sugar jar and pocketed the cash envelopes stuffed inside. I opened Harper's phone and scrolled through her messages, screenshotting, forwarding, collecting. Photos of her bullying other girls at school, messages where she bragged about stealing, about hurting me, about things that could ruin her precious image if anyone saw them. Every move was deliberate. I wasn't just taking back what they owed me, I was building a weapon out of their own cruelty. For days I said nothing, but I carried myself differently. I stood straighter. I looked them in the eye longer. Dad noticed first. "What's with the attitude?" he barked one evening. "You forget your place?" I didn't answer. I just smiled faintly and kept eating. That smile rattled him more than shouting ever could. Harper grew paranoid. She accused me of touching her things, of snooping. "You've got those sneaky eyes," she hissed, grabbing my wrist hard. "Don't think I don't notice." I calmly pulled my wrist free and said softly, "Noticed what?" The way she froze told me she felt it, that shift of power she couldn't explain. Mom tried to reassert control. She stood in the kitchen one morning, blocking me, demanding I hand over the few groceries I had bought with my own paycheck. "Family first," she said, extending her hand. But when I stared back at her and whispered, "This is family first," before brushing past her, she didn't follow. For the first time, she looked unsure. The tension in the house grew thick, buzzing like static in the walls. They didn't know what I was planning, but they knew something was coming, and I made sure they felt it in every silence, every look, every step I took. Because the crawling daughter they mocked was gone. I wasn't crawling anymore. I was standing, waiting for the moment to strike. And when I did, I knew none of them would ever rise again. I gave them the day they wanted a small celebration, because they loved showing off how merciful they were when it fit their image. They called it a family blessing. They filled the living room with cousins and neighbors who'd always nodded at Dad's jokes and praised Harper's new car. I set the date. I cooked. I smiled while my hands shook. Harper arrived in a satin dress, hair perfect, heels sharp enough to puncture her smugness. Dad puffed his chest like a rooster. Mom fussed with the centerpiece, lips already forming the lines she liked to say to anyone who would clap. "This will show everyone we're one big happy family," she cooed, and I let her believe it. When the guests sat, I stood and said the only thing I had rehearsed for months. "Thank you all for coming. I wanted to share something before we eat." My voice didn't wobble. I set my phone on the coffee table, hit play, and the room went quiet. Messages scrolled across the screen from Harper's unlocked phone. The texts where she bragged about the shove on the stairs, the photos of onesies buried in mud, the video of her stabbing the gravy fork into my hand and laughing as I flinched. There were screenshots of Mom laughing as she tossed my groceries to the curb, of Dad telling me to scrub floors while he filmed and joked about training the help. I didn't say a word. I watched faces change color, the nervous shifting of feet, the sound of forks dropping. One of Harper's friends covered her mouth and stood. Are you serious?" she whispered, eyes wide, shame flooding her voice. A neighbor I'd helped with a car once whispered, "I always thought something was off." The pastor who'd smiled at Mom's donations looked down, and the hush grew heavy enough to hurt. Harper stood up, the smile falling off like it was being peeled. "This is private," she snapped, voice trembling. "You can't." Dad leapt forward, ashamed and furious in equal measure. "Maya, what are you doing? You're making a scene." He had the nerve to use my real name like a threat. I said, "This is the scene you made for me my whole life." I handed the phone to one of Harper's oldest friends and watched as message after message was read aloud. No one laughed. They didn't clap for Dad's old jokes. They looked at him with the same confusion I had seen in myself the first time I'd realized love wasn't a constant here, it was a performance. Consequences followed faster than any of them expected. Word got around in the neighborhood from those who had been at the blessing. Harper's friends stopped answering her calls. Her part-time job at the boutique, where she loved being adored, lost interest when a manager I'd quietly contacted read the texts I'd forwarded, the ones about her bullying customers and stealing discounts. People started asking questions at the church about the family values Mrs. Collins had been preaching. Dad's buddies at the bar stopped inviting him to their poker nights when someone mentioned the video of him laughing as I scrubbed the floor. Mom's social group, women who traded favors and recipes, slowly found excuses to be busy. No police came that day. No dramatic arrests. That wasn't my point. The point was the thing they cared about most. Other people's eyes. Their mirror of status, approval, and influence cracked. Harper, who had always fed on applause, sat alone on the couch, phone silent, the room filling with pity and cold stares. Dad shoved his face into his hands and muttered about being betrayed. Mom's hands trembled as she clutched her purse, the place where she'd hidden cash, and for the first time I watched greed look small and stupid. I didn't gloat. I left the house that night with my box of folded onesie scraps because I knew cruelty couldn't be mothered into a child. I had already arranged a safe place through a woman at the clinic. I'd been seeing someone who believed me without needing proof and who offered help without judgment. I didn't take their money. I took their silence. I left a note on the kitchen table, short and plain. I'm gone. Don't come looking. Months later, people still whispered when my name came up, but not in the way they had before. They asked why I'd left so suddenly. They tried to justify Dad's jokes and Mom's tough love. Harper tried to rebuild, plastering over the cracks with new clothes and meaner smiles. But the mirror had been smashed and the reflection was different now. She caught it, and it haunted her. I didn't watch them fall apart. I watched my son's first yawn, the way his tiny fingers curled around mine, and I learned what I had been preparing for all those years, to stand for him. The revenge wasn't blood or a spectacle. It was removing my child from the only life they knew, one that would have taught him to laugh at cruelty, and showing them what it felt like to be the ones left with questions and empty invites. When my mother's neighbor asked months later why she hadn't visited, Mom's answer was a soft, angry thing. She left. That line used to be a dagger aimed at me. Now it hung in the air between them, heavy and final. I didn't reply to any of their calls. I didn't beg for closure they never gave me. I built a new kind of family, quiet, hard-earned, and honest. And every time Harper's name came up in gossip, people remembered how fast she'd run when the lights went out on her little stage. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video?